The member for the P.N. Carlton.
I move second reading of Bill 149, an act to establish an advisory committee to make recommendations on the jury recommendations made in the inquest into the death of Rowan Stringer.
Ms. MacLeod has moved second reading of Bill 149, an act to establish an advisory committee to make recommendations on the jury recommendations made in the inquest into the death of Rowan Stringer. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for a presentation. The member for the P.N. Carlton.
Much Speaker. I will be sharing my time with the member from Ottawa South. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead, the late anthropologist, once famously said that, and I must admit it's become a go-to quote of mine over the past decade when speaking with volunteers. It's simple yet profound, lofty but true. I couldn't help but think of how reflective those words are of the small group of thoughtful and committed citizens from Nepean Carleton who brought Rowan's Law to the floor of this Assembly, and who have been changing the worldview, not just our own local view in Ottawa, on how we identify, treat, and educate athletes, coaches, parents, medical professionals, and others on the reality of concussions, brain injuries, and trauma that could have long-term effects and be potentially fatal. Gordon and Kathleen Stringer, who are here today, have been the backbone of our group. Their courage, their grace, and eloquence throughout the tragedy of losing their beautiful daughter, Rowan, to second impact syndrome caused by multiple concussions has not only been remarkable, but will undoubtedly result in real change. I've come to know Rowan Stringer not from going out for coffee with her or watching her play rugby, but through her mother and father. I've recounted Rowan's story to multiple people, but the most personal to me was my 10-year-old daughter, Victoria, an athlete who plays soccer, hockey, and board and ball. She's also a gymnast. Victoria happened to be in the car when I took a media call on Rowan's Law over my hands-free this past summer. Other members in this Assembly will know that sometimes our job can be all-consuming. And they'll also understand that when I say I didn't realize she was paying attention to my conversation about the death of another child. And that is until the call ended. She heard how Rowan had died. I was alarmed when a very soft voice from the back of the minivan said, "Mama, can you tell me who Rowan is? And will I die from a concussion?" At first, members will be shocked, but I was speechless. I didn't want to answer. I didn't know what to say. But most of all, I didn't want to scare her. But I gave her an honest answer. I told her everything I knew about Rowan Stringer. I told her everything I knew, which was limited at the time, about concussion treatment and awareness, including imparting to her that if she gets hurt in hockey or soccer, that she has a responsibility to tell Mommy and her coaches if she bangs her head. I'm proud to say that she cared so much about Rowan Stringer, and so have so many other people, that I brought her to school today as part of this process. The story of Rowan Stringer is one that every single parent in Ontario needs to be aware of. Rowan was a 17-year-old rugby player. She played for the John McCrae Secondary School and Barhaven Scottish Rugby Club, which I'm very proud have joined us here today as well. She was also a ringette player, just like I was. Rowan was nurturing according to her mom and her dad, and she wanted to become a nurse. She was a young lady with many interests, and she also had many friends. Rowan Stringer left us far too young. In a cruel twist of fate, she died playing the sport she loved. She saved other lives, though, not from her nursing career, but from being an organ donor. Hopefully with the passage of this law, she'll save even more. Rowan Stringer has also become the public face of concussions, so it is only right that the legislation bear her name. A lengthy and emotional coroner's inquest was called into Rowan's death, a death caused by multiple concussions and an injury causing mass swelling in her brain. Rowan likely knew she had a concussion, as we would later find out, but just as likely Rowan did not understand that it could be potentially fatal. Nor would she have understood what the term second impact syndrome would be, meaning a rare condition in which a second or third concussion occurs before the first one is healed. The coroner's inquest made 49 recommendations, many of which fall under provincial jurisdiction, and it suggested it be called Rowans Law. By passing Rowans Law, Ontario will be a leader in Canada, becoming the first jurisdiction in our country with concussion legislation, and I am pleased to have the support of the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport to ensure that this will become law. The coroner's recommendations include making concussion awareness mandatory in Ontario's curriculum, the promotion of an annual Brain Awareness Day, and better tools for coaches, players, and others to identify and treat concussions. Presently, there is no mechanism nor process in the legislature that we can use to implement a coroner's inquest for these recommendations. That is what Rowans Law aims to accomplish. We need Rowans Law to put these life-changing matters into motion. And by passing Rowans Law, the Ontario legislature will empower the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport to act on those recommendations. I'd like to briefly acknowledge some people who are here from Parachute Canada, Ontario Athletic Therapists Association, Coach Canada, and Rugby Canada. There is no doubt in my mind that because of their passion that this bill will be passed into law, and we cannot wait too long to do that. As the groups joining us will tell you, this is a golden opportunity, one that we simply cannot miss. I would be remiss not to point out the first day that we talked about concussion legislation. I was the education critic at the time. Walter Gretzky was sitting in the speaker's chair, and it was the day that Sidney Crosby would actually be cleared to play yet again in the NHL. Just a couple of weeks ago, Wayne Gretzky opined that when he played hockey, we didn't really think about concussions. But today, even little girls like young Keely Bazana from Barhaven, who plays in the same Nepean Wildcats hockey league as my daughter, deal with concussions. She's been out of school in and out for the past 3 months. But we have a lot of work to do, and I know the members in this assembly are up to doing it. There's an old adage where I was growing up in Nova Scotia that would say, many hands make light work. And Rowans Law has proven that old adage true. And it's now time for me to say thank you to those who have made this happen. In our community, a grassroots team met weekly around the big farmhouse table at Parlor Pizza. Joe and Linda Price welcomed their fellow Barhaven Scottish rugby players, Barb Gilly, Gary Thomas, and Phil Salek, Rugby Canada's Paul Hunter, as well as community leaders Daryl Bartraw and Bob Wilson, and concussion therapist Ashley Powers, Ottawa councillors Jan Harder and Jody Middick, and my team. They were the driving force behind a province-wide campaign to petition all members of this assembly who have circulated, supported, and shared it in the public record. My colleagues in this House today who will speak, I thank you in advance. My gratitude, however, is most extended to the members for Kitchener-Waterloo and Ottawa South for co-sponsoring Rowans Law and for helping these Nepean Carleton residents take this to the floor of the assembly. We must be doing something right, my dear friends, because the federal government wants to emulate us. I would also like to say thank you to my staff. Julia McKenzie, thank you for adopting this project as if it was your own baby. You have nurtured Rowans Law with compassion, diligence, and hard work. Jordan Milks, you were diligently involved in every draft of this bill, and you made it exactly what the Stringer family wanted and what my community and my colleagues wanted. Frank Hall, your vision, passion, and drive in Nepean Carleton for Rowans Law brought this bill to new heights. So as I close and I remind you of that quote from Margaret Mead, I also want to point out one other young lady. Her name is Shannon Hall. She is 14 years old from the city of Ottawa, and she took the petition and got hundreds of signatures from her classmates. And Shannon, I'd like to acknowledge you right now because I think in order for us to carry this forward and make this bill become law, we need a lot more Shannon Halls in this assembly. So with that, I cede the floor to my colleagues from Ottawa South, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for making this a reality.
Thank you.